So Nvidia just announced their new graphics cards, and I am thoroughly impressed. It's Gamescom. Nvidia had their press conference where they're announcing their new RTX series of cards, the 2080 being the flagship. And I was really impressed with what Nvidia just unveiled. So they unveiled 3 RTX graphics cards today. The RTX 2070, which has 8 gigabytes per second and 8 gigabytes of RAM. The 2080 is 8 gigabytes per second with 8 gigabytes of RAM. And then the RTX 2080 Ti, which is the card that I'm probably going to pick up, has 10 gigabytes along with 11 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the interesting spec between them all are these new RTX ops. And this is essentially the new CUDA core. This is the new way that they're using to measure a lot of the math that goes on inside these cards. So at the 2070, there's 45 trillion RTX ops, and with the 2080 Ti, there's 78, and then it also goes up with higher end cards like the Quadro series. What these RTX operations do is basically compute a lot of the ray tracing, it computes a lot of the reflections, it computes a lot of the occlusions, and all of the mathematics that go on inside it. It's just so grand compared to Pascal that they needed to measure it in a different way. And what's interesting about that is the actual jump and the actual advancement from where Pascal was at to where Turing is at now. Normally there's, a little bit of more of like a linear slope in terms of progression. So pricing is a little bit surprising, but to me it's really not that surprising. The 2070 is going to be coming in at $500, the 2080 is going to be coming in at $700, and the 2080 Ti will be coming in at $1,000. And you can also pick up the Quadro RTX 800, which is a dual Turing card for $20,000, so about $10,000 each. I think the sweet spot is the 2070 because that's going to give you these RTX features such as the ray tracing, such as the occlusion and all these crazy Fresnel reflections and stuff like that, and also power any games that don't have it at a high resolution and not really affect performance. It's just at a cheaper cost. Where the higher end 2080 Ti is going to basically give you all of the performance that you're possibly going to need with these RTX features, as well as increase in resolution. It's just an overall faster card. But with the 2070 at $500, you're not missing out on that RTX technology. And that RTX technology is what's going to bring you a lot of these examples that we're going to talk about now. So one of the first games that they sort of demoed was the new Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I think that's what it's called. And what they show you in the demo is exactly what the RTX technology is doing in terms of graphics. Now this scene here shows you what the RTX looks like when it's turned off, and it looks really good already. I mean, we can tell that graphics these days are just at another level. But just wait until you turn it on and you can clearly see the difference the lighting and the shadows make within the scene. And the way the kid sort of kind of moves his hand about with that light source, casting those shadows. But when looking at the scene, we can tell these shadows aren't just like hard 2D planes thrown out on the 3D image. They're actually taking in other light sources within the scene. And what this does is just makes it look so much more realistic. I mean, the shadow detail in these scenes is just super impressive, and it's all real time, which is the best part about it. Now, the next scene is really something that I think is awesome, and that this is showing how the indirect light works. Again, this is playing off the ray tracing idea. In this scene where the RTX is off, we can see how there's a global illumination within that room. So we have the light coming in through the window, and it's casting, it's casting hard light onto these things and casting hard shadows. But you wouldn't otherwise be able to see the room unless they turned on that just global illumination, and it's not really refracting that light amongst the room like it would naturally until you turn the RTX on, and that's when the ray tracing comes in and you see it a lot better. It's kind of hard to see in this scene, but it's lit in a much more natural way. That indirect light is bouncing all throughout the room, and it does it in a really natural and impressive way, and it just looks so much better. It's just awesome. But to me, the most impressive demo was the Battlefield 5 demo, because they showed it in a much more visceral way. And this also means that this game, which is coming out really soon, will have the RTX feature set within it, which is awesome. So we're going to be able to test this stuff out pretty quickly. But the first scene that you can see here is with the eyes, and you're gonna see the reflection of like this fire in this guy's eyes, which is again being done in engine, done in card. Now that wouldn't be there because that fire that is in this guy's eyes is not actually on the screen. And that's what current technology allows us. So they would have to either paint that in themselves, render that in themselves, or just turn the RTX feature set on, and now it does cast that reflection in the guy's eyes without it having to be in the scene. And if you don't understand what I'm saying now, check it out here with this this car scene.
With RTX on, if we set off an explosion behind the tank here, but next to the car.
Oh, come on!
Reflecting accurately within the car.
That's impossible.
Of course.
How would you do that with RTX off?
Yeah, how does that look? Like this here. Yeah, so you can see.
Wow, it just happens.
With SSR, if it's in the screen space, you still get some of the reflections upon the car, but due to the nature of SSR, it disappears as it goes away. But because ray tracing just works, you just get the expected result, how you'd think you'd see it.
Truly, truly impressive. It just adds just a whole nother level of immersion and speed, really, speed with these developers. In this scene, you can see how the reflection of the flamethrower is cast upon different textures. So the wood grain, it diffuses that reflection. You can still see it, but it actually diffuses it. And because of the subsurface scattering, it kind of reflects that light in a different way. And also because of the way that the textures are built, you know, wood has somewhat of a grain to it, and you can see that within the reflections, which is just crazy. And then the way that it reflects off the metal, the way that it reflects off glass and windows, it just all comes together so naturally, so seamlessly. It looks so good. And that flamethrower is off screen, yet you can see those reflections here, which wouldn't be possible before. That's why when they turn it off, all those reflections are gone, because that flamethrower is not in your vision. It's not in the scene. And one thing that I really think is cool are these new reflections that they added to the windows. So if we're looking at the windows on the bus, we can see that the building next to it is being reflected in those windows. Normally they would cube map them, essentially just kind of casting a 2D image across it, but these are true reflections, and they show you how when the building behind them starts to crumble, you can also see it in the reflection, something that wasn't possible before. But what's also interesting is the way that the reflections are shown. So the harder the angle, the harder you see that angle on the window, the more reflected it becomes, which is normally how reflections work. And then of course the finale, where they drop this bomb in the center of the scene, and it just showcases the entire thing in real time, shows all the reflections, shows all the refractions and all the numbers and penumbras, and it really just comes together really nicely, and I'm just super duper impressed. This is what you can expect with these new RTX cards and these new RTX features. This is really just a super step up in terms of graphical fidelity. It's going to allow developers, like I said, to take those saved resources that save time and just input them into something that matters, like character development, like story, like getting really good voice acting. In order to really impress with graphics, today you would have to just add so much more resources to that to add those extra reflections and extra cube maps and extra shadows. The way that they're all done in engine, in the mathematics of the card, it just frees it all up, and now it's just basically you put it in the scene and it's going to reflect in the way that you want it, on textures the way that you want it, it's going to refract the way that you want it. And then finally, this last little scene here at the end of their presentation where they show this little robot dancing in the room. It's just really a beautiful example of how this is it. This is the holy grail. This is what we've been waiting for. And it's only going to get better from here. As time goes on, really what we're going to have is just a higher fidelity. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be picking up one. Let me know if you guys are picking one up, if you're going to pre-order. They're going to be out pretty soon. Thinks that they're shipping September 20th. I always love new GPU time. I was the first in line for a 1080. I'm going to be the first in line for a 2080 Ti. I can't wait for these cards to come out. But as soon as I get it, I'm going to let you know how it is. We're going to benchmark the shit out of it. We're going to really see what these new feature sets do. So if you're interested in those videos, make sure you subscribe so you can check them out. And yeah, also follow at Instagram and Twitter at NoLifeDigital. I'm going to catch y'all later. Peace.